You told me there was no court today.
This is a court that's got nothing to do with you. Starting there, we're going to be back and you're going to be going to jail.
This corrupt officer thinks that he can break the law inside a courtroom, but he and many others like him are about to face instant karma in the 2-hour courtroom showdown. Stay tuned as these cases only get wilder.
Dude, the cop comes until he treats me like a asshole.
In February of 2020, a First Amendment auditor, Derek, was peacefully sitting and observing the court proceedings in a Williams County courtroom when a court deputy came over and removed him.
What's going on?
How you doing?
Good, how are you?
So, what's your business here today?
Oh, I'm going to look at court.
Just look at court?
Yeah, that's what I'm doing, sitting in there.
Okay, well.
What are you sitting there for?
What am I sitting in there for?
That's why I'm asking.
You told me there was no court today.
This is a court that's got nothing to do with you.
Deputy Royce Crone began intimidating him without cause, treating him as if he had broken the law simply for sitting in a public courtroom.
So you're just wandering around sitting in a courtroom where you don't know anything that's going on?
Yeah, why can't you?
Huh?
What amendment is that? The Fourth Amendment?
I don't know if I'm not going to quote amendments.
So I'm going to go back in here, I'm going to sit and watch.
And you're going to be civil. Because if you're not,
was I in there not being civil?
No, I'm just telling you what's
I'm
going to
telling
happen.
you.
No, I'm telling you what's going to happen.
I'm telling you what's going to happen.
No,
I'm in there.
I'm telling you what's going to happen.
Hey,
You're going to go in there, if you're going to go in there, you're going to be quiet. Go down here. Go down here.
Let's walk around this corner. Around the corner.
I got no problem with you being in there, but if you're starting there, we're going to be back and you're going to be going to jail.
Didn't I ask you
do you understand what I said? Do you understand what I said? Do you understand what I said?
I asked you if there was court today and you told me no.
This is a civil trial.
It doesn't matter what it is. I can go in there. That's why there's benches. You can go see it.
It's not your business.
The deputy has no shame whatsoever as he makes up laws on his own. His aggressive demeanor is only about to worsen as he realizes that the auditor is also well versed in the law.
You can go see it.
It's not your business.
It's public, so it is my business.
So why did you go to every office?
Why can't I?
Huh?
What's the big deal?
Why is your problem?
Why can't I?
Why you
Because people don't normally do that. They don't come in here and go to everybody's places.
walk all over the place for no reason at all?
I'm not most people. I'm going in there,
finding that out.
and I asked you if there was court today, and you told me no.
Right, there is.
Because
no
I like
court.
to go in, not a lot, and go watch court.
Yes,
So when
I
is
have
court
a
session? For what?
I want to see your
For
identification.
what law?
I want to see your identification.
What?
I'm
For
asking
what?
you as a peace officer for some ID, so I know what I'm
For
talking.
coming and seeing?
No, because you're in my building.
My name's Derek, and this is our building.
I need your information.
It's our building.
Derek, let's not. Okay, I'm gonna security here, right? We've had security concerns in the past. Okay, that's what we have. You're right. It is public. Okay, but when you're going from room to room, that's unusual. Okay.
The corrupt officers once again try to use the classic officer safety excuse to deny someone exercising their constitutional right. Shockingly, the deputy had even lied earlier, claiming that court was not in session.
We're investigating a suspicious act in a government building. Okay, so if you ask for identification, you do have to provide it. Okay.
Okay, and why? I don't understand. Like I go in there and you pull me out when I'm legally okay to go in
We're
there.
checking to see what's going on. We're investigating.
I'm legally fine to go in there
Yeah,
and
but
watch
we want
court.
to make
And
sure
you
that
pull me out. Really?
we're just seeing what your intentions are and what's going on.
For a legally okay act. I don't. They're not. No, it's not suspicious.
It is to me.
Me and you don't have the same options of what's suspicious. What's suspicious to me is you pull me out of court when I'm in there
What's
watching,
suspicious to me?
not being loud. Sir, I let you talk. No, you're not going to shush me. I let you talk. I'm in there watching court and you have me come out here so they can run my ID. I'm in court and I'm sitting and being civil, not making any noise. And I asked you downstairs, was there court today? You told me no. And then you're like, well, it's none of your business. It's public. So it is my business. I can go in there and I can watch.
Derek wasn't going to be an easy target for sure. He continued to grill the deputies who had violated his rights by removing him from a court without the judge ordering them to.
We have security concerns in here. People just don't walk around.
I'm not most people.
I'm talking now. Remember, it's my turn. Most people don't talk, don't walk around and go to every office and checking out everything. That is not a normal thing to be done. That is suspicious to me. That's why these gentlemen are here. All right? This is a civil trial. You have no reason really to be in there. There's no reason to be in there.
any courtroom.
Okay?
Watching what's
You're
going
giving
on.
me an attitude whenever I ask you something. You might start something in there. I've got a full place full
And
of
I'm
people.
sitting there being civil and quiet. So then your security clearance goes right out the window. I don't understand what your problem is.
You're in my building.
This is our building. This is a public building,
You're in my
not
building.
your building.
It's my building.
Public, it's
For
not your
security.
building. It is not your building. So quit saying it's my building.
You're in my building.
It's not your building.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not.
I'm security here, it's my building.
It's not your building.
I'm responsible for this building.
Okay, and when I came
checking on
in-
anybody that's suspicious.
And I'm not suspicious. You are suspicious. Treat me like a criminal when I'm not.
The situation was getting heated, and the poor auditor had every right to be frustrated, as he had been done in by these tyrants who didn't know the law.
Let's go downstairs.
Let's go public
Let's
right
go
now.
downstairs.
All right, let's go.
All right, let's go.
10-4, thank you.
Come on, downstairs.
For what?
Huh? What's going on in this court?
Well,
This is a county building.
Okay, and it's public. We know
If
that.
you're not here for court and they don't want you here, they can do that.
If you're trespassing, they can do that. I'm not. Or I'm committing a crime. I'm not committing a crime. I'd like to go to court and
it's
watch.
but our building, their building, whatever. If they don't want you here, they can be like, time to go.
For if you commit, it's like trespassing. If I commit,
You don't have to commit a crime. You don't have to.
Okay.
Okay? Does that make
It's
sense?
still a county building.
So if they want you gone, then you have to leave.
The problem is I didn't do anything.
Right.
I
But
gave you my ID and I was nice. He's more than rude, and you guys are very nice. And I just want to go in there. I want to sit and not like I was. Was I doing anything wrong? I was just sitting in there
Right.
watching. That I'm okay to do.
right.
The officers disrespected him and were straight up lying to his face. Now, this happens when unchecked authority goes to their head. They think they can say anything and get away with it.
But you're at the point where, like I said, he's the head of this building, so what he says, you kind of got to do it. Okay?
So let's get your boss then. Let's get your boss then.
Let's go downstairs.
Is your boss? We're gonna go talk to your
Let's
boss.
go downstairs.
We'll go downstairs and figure
Yep.
it out there, okay?
Take the stairs for us.
My boss, my sergeant, is not here today. Therefore, I am in charge right now.
All right.
Okay?
So I was up there not doing anything wrong. As you know, I don't have that. If you're like, hey, you need I don't need help. They ran my stuff, nothing came back. It tells you that I'm not a criminal. I've never been to court for stuff other than watching stuff in Minot. That's why when I ask, hey, is there any court going on? You're like, no. And I'm like, okay, well, let me see the building. I'm from Minot. I'm not from Williston, so let me see the building. That's what I was doing.
The deputies were now adamant about kicking him out of the building. It is bizarre how these cops still have no clue about public and private buildings and how they behave.
So if I got loud, I apologize. But we know that I can go in that courtroom, I can sit there and watch what's going on. It's public record. It's not
My concern
secretive.
is that you've gone to every
That's fine, because I'm asking
every
questions.
hallway, every office, places where I couldn't see you, and you were there
Yeah,
for a while.
and I'm asking
I don't know
questions.
what's going on.
Yeah, you're fine.
All right?
You're absolutely
I'm not
okay.
asking questions. You're saying that you have no business here, you just want to sit.
Why can't I sit in the court? I'm just watching. That's all I'm doing.
When I first approached you and asked you about this, you copped an attitude with me.
No, I
All right,
just
yes,
not.
you
I
did.
kind of looked at you and didn't copy
No,
that.
you copped
And I
an attitude.
apologize.
All right?
And I went up there and I was sitting and I was like, okay,
I'm
well,
going to
it's
give you an
done.
option, all right? You go up there, you can sit.
Okay.
I'm going to be up, it's going to be on camera, all right? I'll be watching. If I get any hint, any slight hint that there's going to be a problem, you will be out of here. Do you understand?
Yeah.
All right.
Although he allowed him back into the courtroom to watch the proceedings, his rude tone needed to be addressed. However, getting held accountable for anything just sets this tyrant off.
Are you not used to talking to people?
Oh, I'm used to talking to people.
I'm not.
I've been here for over 20 years, man. I know about talking to
Did I
people.
cuss at you?
Huh?
Did I cuss
Did
at
I
you?
cuss at you?
You just said the F word.
Or you want to start, the way I talk, then you can just leave. If you're going to have a problem with the way I talk, then you can just leave.
Am I being unreasonable here?
Gentlemen, I'm out of here.
Am I
Okay.
being unreasonable?
Okay. Yeah, like we said, you got your ID? Brett, you got his ID?
Not yet, back home.
Okay. All right. Well, I don't want to have to escort you out, but you got to go, man. Okay?
We'll get your lieutenant, or where can I go?
My lieutenant?
Chief, whoever it is. I did nothing wrong.
Okay.
I was in here just looking around, which is
Yeah,
public
like-
property. I can do.
Well, this is my sergeant. You want to talk to him? You can talk to
I'm
him.
the supervisor on the table.
Okay, and I never got an attitude with him. You've seen the way he's acting with me. I was not rude.
Shockingly, instead of upholding the law, the officers also followed Deputy Crone's lead and asked the auditor to leave the building.
I can go up there and watch court, and I can sit there and be quiet, and that's what I was doing.
But as head of security for the building here, if he thinks the actions are suspicious, he wants to leave.
What is...
then
What,
listen to me.
go ahead.
If you thinks the actions are suspicious, he wants to leave, and you don't have a legitimate purpose other than to watch, I'm going to ask you to leave. That being said, if you do wish to file a complaint, there are options for that, and it would be...
So where's the suspicion? Can you show me what is suspicious on a piece of paper?
I've already
The law.
explained to you why it's suspicious. Okay? You come into a government building, and you walk through...
Public
Still a
property.
government building.
But it's still public property.
It's still government building. Okay? You go through security checkpoint and get in everything, okay? And you start going through offices where we have attorneys, important paperwork, lawyers, everything like that here in this building.
It is concerning to see how much authority Crone seems to think that he has. He has never been held accountable, and it's time that someone takes action and files a complaint.
What is, we can go, let's go to public property, right on the sidewalk, because I want to talk to you guys more. What is his fucking problem? And now I'm going to use my freedom of speech here because that, come on, guys.
Okay.
We know that it's, I can go in there and look. I'm from Minot. I'm not from Williston, so there's nothing, what's the word, suspicious about me walking through. I even asked the lady, what's the difference between municipal and district? And I asked him, hey, is there any court today? In her office, and he told me no.
Yeah.
If he said, yeah, there's court on the third floor, okay, then I'm going to go to court on the third floor and sit there and watch like I was doing.
I mean, there's no city court today. Maybe that's kind of the side of that. But either way, I understand. Yes, you can do court. But and I just want you to see my point when I say this is suspicious activity, okay? It's unusual. We don't have that usually.
Of course you don't.
Yeah,
I mean,
so that's why we're checking on it.
yes,
Now,
of course.
Derek had been respectful throughout the altercation, but seeing how things turned out for him, he had every reason to hurl profanities. It is really tough to handle a tyrant like Crone when they violate your right.
You see, he just said, come on, guys, I'm not doing anything wrong.
Right.
So now I'm going to go get my camera and I'm going to sit here on public property, which we know I can do,
Right.
and record in there. Because this is public property. So if he gets an attitude with it, let's be real here.
Right.
It is public property.
Yeah, this is public.
This is public property.
Right.
I was doing nothing. Like, this is my problem, right, guys? You ran my ID. I've never done anything wrong. I've never stolen, never done nothing. And when he treats me like I don't want to use the cuss words. Excuse me, a criminal. Come on, what is that? And I understand. Hey, I understand. It's also suspicious for somebody to walk around on a public street and record your house. But there's
Right.
nothing against the law to do that.
Now, it is a shame that this auditor seems to know more about the law than someone who has been in the job for over 20 years. Although the officers seem to agree with him on most things, they did not dare say a word against their senior.
If you're not I can't go into your yard and record into your window when you're naked. We know the law, the camera law.
Right.
But
Now, that being said, if your actions do arrest or annoy, that can be disorderly conduct.
yeah,
There are laws
but
that can cover
it's
that.
yeah, and it's all
Either way.
disorderly. Yeah, and if you're just sitting there,
I'm going to move to this point for you, okay, my man? Because, like I understand where you're coming from. I really do.
I almost want to cry here. I was at Walmart in Minot, right? They were like, give me your ID. I said, no, or not my ID, but let me see your receipt. I said, no, I paid for my stuff. They're like, no, you didn't, you stole. Well, we're going to call the police. Okay. Like you said, you want my ID, I have no problem giving it to you. I don't know if it's going to like open up some can of worms where I can't go on a flight. I don't know. I've only heard, but I don't know.
Your state
Yeah.
history.
But you know what I'm getting at.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, the cop's going to come. He's not going to give me a problem. Dude, the cop comes and totally treats me like a asshole. Like, oh, they know you stole. And for me, it's like, oh, you know, and I know you guys are just doing your job, but it doesn't help. And I'm going to do this, never broke a law.
I can't speak for Minot PD. I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean,
Derek continued his painful rant, and he was rightfully pissed off at the deputy's behavior. It's reckless officers like this who burden their cities with costly lawsuits.
Right.
To be treated like him, and I'm not going to go, oh, well, let me go and file a claim. What's that going to do? At the end of the day, though, whatever. That's my view on it now.
Yeah.
And when you say, and I hate when people go, oh, I know how you feel. You do not know how I feel. You do not know how I feel. I don't know how you feel. I don't know how you feel. You deal with criminals all day. You deal with some innocent people. So it's like you get, I don't want to go off on tangents, but you know what I'm getting.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't like, well, I'm not giving you. I wasn't like that. If I was like that, I could have been like, I couldn't see you guys going, okay, well, we're gonna do this. I mean, you know, I don't know. Should I go talk to a lawyer right now and be like, hey, I was in the court down there. They told me there's no court, and then they had me escorted out for no reason. You know, I'll sue him. I don't care.
I mean, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, you can. It's
You want to file a complaint?
we're supposed to protect. Why is it that I've had 2 interactions with police in Minot, or not Minot, but North Dakota, and it seems like the protect and serve thing goes right out the window. You're not supposed to protect and serve one person. I thought you're supposed to protect and serve 2.
It is great to see an auditor taking a stand for himself against these corrupt officials. Once again, the officer tries to lie about the encounter, but Derek immediately shuts him down and keeps delivering his fiery speech. speech.
All right, like I said, I'm just gonna get my camera and set it up here and
Yeah.
try to get a
Whatever you
camera of
want,
him.
man.
And that's
Just don't one thing.
no. And I didn't talk to him.
No,
Like,
and listen to me.
Go ahead.
If confrontation happens, just call the police department.
Yeah.
Don't get confrontational.
no, I didn't, and that's why I walked. I didn't walk. I
Right.
walked away.
And I know you didn't. I'm just telling. I just don't want you to.
I know.
Because
What? Yeah, and like I said, I know inside you guys are doing a job. And I understand you have to. You say, oh well, it's suspicious to this. Okay, it might be suspicious for people to talk to themselves. People that talk to themselves think it's just fine.
Yep.
I understand you're just doing your job.
Yep. We're just like I said.
Yeah.
I don't know what you were
Just
doing.
checking
at
on
first.
you.
Yep.
And now we know.
Yep. And hey, for him to go, oh well, we want you, dude. He's not gonna sit and treat me like I don't want to cuss, but I know it's my right to do so. He's not gonna treat me like a f***ing asshole and expect me just to sit there and take it from him. I'm an adult. He is not my dad. I'm not his kid. If I'm his kid, he can talk to me like that.
Right.
He is not gonna treat me like that, and it's not fine. It's not okay. He was out of line. I was not out of line. I have a hard time with if somebody's yelling at me with being quiet, and that's why I couldn't.
Yeah, like we can tell you're frustrated right now. We totally
I didn't do
understand.
anything. I just went in there to watch the court, which I can do by law.
Shortly after, the auditor left the courthouse, but only to file a lawsuit against the officers and Deputy Crone. He has since hired a lawyer, and the lawsuit is underway. Well, this deputy made a joke out of himself, but this next cop was rightfully punished and sentenced in court.
As sentence for count 1, the court commits you to the custody of the Commissioner of Corrections for a period of 270 months. That's 270.
Police officer Derek Chauvin was arrested and charged with the murder of George Floyd, an incident that sparked worldwide protests and riots. During the trial, another officer who had previously pulled over Floyd was called to testify.
You were the officer who approached the passenger side of the vehicle. You approached George Floyd on May 6th of 2019, is that right?
That's correct, yes.
And you had your gun drawn when you approached Mr. Floyd, isn't that right?
Yes, I pulled it, yes.
And when you approached Mr. Floyd, he said, "Don't shoot me, man, I don't want to get shot," right?
Something like that, yes.
You told him to undo his seatbelt, correct?
That's correct, yes, ma'am.
And he did that, right?
Yes, he did.
And then you said, "Put your hands where I can see them," correct?
Yes.
And then he put his hands in the air?
Yes,
And then you told him to put his hands on the dash, is that right?
that's correct.
And that was when you grabbed his hand and forcibly put it on the dashboard of the vehicle, correct?
Fallen, yes.
And you had your gun drawn the whole time you were giving commands, right?
Once I started ordering him and he refused to show me his hands, yes, it escalated where I pulled my gun, yes, ma'am.
And he was awake, correct?
What's that, ma'am?
Mr. Floyd was awake. Was he awake during this incident?
Yes.
While you were interacting with Mr. Floyd, he didn't collapse on the ground, correct?
Wait a minute, what was the question? Can you speak up a little louder, ma'am?
While you were interacting with Mr. Floyd, he didn't collapse on the ground, correct?
No, he did not.
Well, the answer is stricken. The objection is sustained.
You were asking questions about what the other officers were doing, correct?
That's correct.
Your attention was focused on Mr. Floyd, correct?
Yes, it was.
And Mr. Floyd didn't drop dead while you were interacting with him, correct?
No.
The officer did not have much to say. Finally, after a long trial, the judge was ready to announce Chauvin's sentence. But first, he had a message for everyone in the courtroom.
I've read all the impact statements that were submitted earlier and listened carefully to all the input here today. And it is truly appreciated that you took the time to stay with this case and to provide me with input. I have reviewed the pre-sentence investigation and carefully considered all the facts of the case and the law, but my comments are actually going to be very brief because most of it's going to be in writing. I have a 22-page memorandum that is going to be attached to the sentencing order. And why am I doing it in writing? To emphasize the fact that determining the appropriate sentence in any case, and in this case, is a legal analysis. It's applying the rule of law to the facts of an individual and specific case. And that is why, as opposed to trying to being profound here on the record, I prefer that you read the legal analysis that explains how I determined the sentence in this case.
The judge assured everyone that the sentence is not based on any pressure or opinion from the public and was strictly according to the law.
It has been painful throughout Hennepin County, throughout the state of Minnesota, and even the country. But most importantly, we need to recognize the pain of the Floyd family. I'm not going to attempt to be profound or clever because it's not the appropriate time. I'm not basing my sentence also on public opinion. I'm not basing it on any attempt to send any messages. A trial court judge, the job of a trial court judge is to apply the law to specific facts and to deal with individual cases.
Finally, the judge laid the sentence, which ensured that the tyrant officer would never be able to see a day out of prison.
Mr. Chauvin, as to count 1, based on the verdict of the jury finding you guilty of unintentional second-degree murder while committing a felony under Minnesota Statute 609.19 subdivision 2 paren 1, it is the judgment of the court that you now stand convicted of that offense. Pursuant to Minnesota Statute section 609.04, counts 2 and 3 will remain unadjudicated as they are lesser offenses of count 1. As sentenced for count 1, the court commits you to the custody of the Commissioner of Corrections for a period of 270 months. That's 270. That is a 10-year addition to the presumptive sentence of 150 months. This is based on your abuse of a position of trust and authority, and also the particular cruelty shown to George Floyd. You are granted credit for 199 days already served. Pay the mandatory surcharge of $78 to be paid from prison wages. You're prohibited from possessing firearms, ammunition, or explosives for the remainder of your life. Provide a DNA sample as required by law. Register as a predatory offender as required by law. And then you will receive a copy of the order and also the attached memorandum explaining the court's analysis.
If this needs to be said, we just ask that it be executed forthwith.
Defendant is remanded to the custody of the sheriff to be transported back to the DOC or whichever custody is currently holding him. Anything for the defense? No, Your Honor. All right. Thank you. We are adjourned.
If you think this cop was the worst, you have no clue how this next tyrant reacted in front of the judge. Cops are often protected by qualified immunity after breaking the law. However, today we bring you cases of crooked and corrupt police officers who made some huge mistakes and were instantly owned in the courtroom. In December of 2012, suspect Anthony Waller was brought in front of a judge after he was sentenced on assault charges. As he tried to speak to the judge, the officer holding him did something terrible, taking the law into his own hands.
Investigation for false imprisonment, assault in the third degree, assault as a class 2 felony, and a misdemeanor charge as well in possession of drug paraphernalia.
I'd like to object first. If I'm under investigation, I thought the investigation came first, then the rest came.
Get on your feet. You don't turn on me. Get on your feet. Get on your feet.
Deputy Brady Lovingair assaulted the poor man and pushed him onto the ground before taking him to jail. However, his actions were found unlawful and he was suspended from his job. He eventually resigned from the position. Meanwhile, Waller was awarded $50,000 in compensation by a federal jury. Now, while this cop made a mistake in court, this next tyrant officer was punished for something more sinister.
The court commits you to the custody of the Commissioner of Corrections for a period of 270 months. That's 270.
In May of 2020, Officer Derek Chauvin knelt on the neck of poor George Floyd, eventually causing his death. This led to massive protests all over the world and also the start of the BLM movement. Officer Chauvin was then charged and eventually found guilty of third-degree murder and second-degree manslaughter.
I wanted to thank everybody for being here and for providing the input you did. not just the people who were in the courtroom here, but also those who provided written statements, both from the Floyd family and the defendant's family. I've read all the impact statements that were submitted earlier and listened carefully to all the input here today, and it is truly appreciated that you took the time to stay with this case and to provide me with input. I have reviewed the pre-sentence investigation and carefully considered all the facts of the case and the law, but my comments are actually going to be very brief. Most of it's going to be in writing. I have a 22-page memorandum that is going to be attached to the sentencing order. And why am I doing it in writing? To emphasize the fact that determining the appropriate sentence in any case, and in this case, is a legal analysis. It's applying the rule of law to the facts of an individual and specific case. And that is why, as opposed to trying to being profound here on the record, I prefer that you read the legal analysis that explains how I determined the sentence in this case.
Now, high-profile cases like these must be handled carefully in order to set a strong precedent for the future. The judge reminded everyone that emotions do not play any part in the sentencing.
What the case is, or what the sentence is not based on, is emotion or sympathy. But at the same time, I want to acknowledge the deep and tremendous pain that all the families are feeling, especially the Floyd family. You have our sympathies. And I acknowledge and hear the pain that you are feeling. I acknowledge the pain not only of those in this courtroom, but the Floyd family who are outside this courtroom and other members of the community. It has been painful throughout Hennepin County, throughout the state of Minnesota, and even the country. But most importantly, we need to recognize the pain of the Floyd family.
Derek stood there listening, without a trace of shame on his face. It was clear he felt no remorse for his action.
I'm going to attempt to be profound or clever, because it's not the appropriate time. I'm not basing my sentence also on public opinion. I am not basing it on any attempt to send any messages. A trial court judge, the job of a trial court judge is to apply the law to specific facts and to deal with individual cases.
Finally, after a short speech, the judge handed over the much-awaited sentence, which brought some sort of peace to Floyd's family and the people that were hurting all over the country.
Mr. Chauvin, as to count one, based on the verdict of the jury finding you guilty of unintentional second-degree murder while committing a felony under Minnesota Statute 609.19 subdivision 2 paren 1, it is the judgment of the court that you now stand convicted of that offense. Pursuant to Minnesota Statute section 609.04, counts 2 and 3 will remain unadjudicated as they are lesser offenses of count 1. As sentence for count 1, the court commits you to the custody of the Commissioner of Corrections for a period of 270 months. That's 270. That is a 10-year addition to the presumptive sentence of 150 months. This is based on your abuse of a position of trust and authority, and also the particular cruelty shown to George Floyd.
Chauvin was also required to register as a predatory offender as his life came crashing down after being sentenced to 22.5 years in prison.
You are granted credit for 199 days already served. Pay the mandatory surcharge of $78 to be paid from prison wages. You're prohibited from possessing firearms, ammunition, or explosives for the remainder of your life. Provide a DNA sample as required by law. Register as a predatory offender as required by law. And then you will receive a copy of the order and also the attached memorandum explaining the court's analysis. Anything further from the state?
If this needs to be said, we just ask that it be executed forthwith.
Defendant is remanded to the custody of the sheriff to be transported back to the DOC or whichever custody is currently holding him. Anything for the defense? No, Your Honor. All right. Thank you. We are adjourned.
Chauvin was sent to Oak Park Heights Prison, and in 2024, he was stabbed 22 times by another inmate. However, he is expected to make a full recovery. While Derek was punished, here is another corrupt cop who did the unthinkable and was punished in court.
In the unclassified felony of armed criminal action, I sentence you to a term of incarceration of 6 years in the Missouri Department of Corrections.
In December of 2019, 26-year-old Cameron Lamb was sitting in his car inside his garage when Officer Eric DeValken and murdered him.
Cameron Lamb is dead. And Eric DeValken, that's undisputed. Cameron Lamb was by all accounts a helpful and loving son, brother, father, and friend. People who have contacted me and who I have heard from today have described him as funny, caring, giving. Miss Gray called him a protector, a jokester, and my favorite of all the ones that I read, not a saint, but our angel.
Cameron Lamb was trying to chase his girlfriend, but halfway he changed his mind and he headed back home. The officers should have de-escalated the situation, but these tyrants were only focused on ending his life.
Also, as I'm weighing all these facts, it can't be overlooked that the events of December 3rd of 2019 were initially set into motion by Cameron Lamb and his decision to chase his girlfriend through city streets at dangerously high speeds, putting motorists and other members of the public at risk. However, those events tragically concluded with the actions of Troy Schwam and the defendant. Pulling up to defendant's house, Sergeant Schwam pulling into the driveway, immediately getting out with his weapon drawn, rapidly moving, without taking a breath, without pausing for the briefest of moments to consider where they were going, what they would find when they got back there, whether they were acting lawfully in doing so. That is made even more aggravating as the court considers an appropriate sentence in this case by the fact that the one person who ultimately did take a breath that morning was Cameron Lamb.
DeValken was in civil clothes and had entered his property without notifying him. It only then took him 9 more seconds to fire his gun and kill Lamb on the spot.
He did this when at some point, while he was chasing his girlfriend, he decided to discontinue the chase and to go home. Cameron Lamb is not racing through the streets of his neighborhood at this point. He's not driving through yards to get away from anyone. He does not abandon the truck and let it roll into someone's yard while he flees on foot. Rather, he simply pulls into the driveway of his home, pulls around back, puts the vehicle into reverse, and slowly begins backing it down the driveway under the carport and into his garage.
The officer had no remorse on his face, and to make matters worse, the judge even tried to side with him, claiming that he did not intend to murder him.
And it is hard to accept this distinction. I know that. Murder and involuntary manslaughter arising from criminal negligence are two different things. They are different legal concepts. They are different things. Eric DeValken is not Derek Chauvin, who murdered George Floyd. Eric DeValken is not one of the 3 men in Georgia convicted of running down and Ahmaud Arbery. This is a mitigating factor. Defendant has no prior criminal history. His ORAS scores him as a low risk in all categories. Defendant's history as a police officer, husband and father, friend and colleague is also a mitigating factor that I have taken into account as his father asked me to do, which I was already going to do, and that is to consider the totality of the circumstances and to consider the totality of the defendant's life.
Judge Dale Youngs appeared to extend some level of courtesy to the police officer, with the Kansas City Police Department also backing their officer.
The facts and the circumstances in the history of defendant's career and his life that have been presented to this court have demonstrated he has not hesitated to immediately take action when he believed the circumstances surrounding him warranted it. And this trait has generally served him and others well. It also failed him, as it did on December 3rd of 2019.
Finally, the judge announced the sentence, and sadly, it was nothing more than a slap on the wrist.
Cameron Lamb is dead. Eric DeValken, and the court has found that that happened because the defendant acted without considering or being aware of the substantial and unjustifiable risks associated with his conduct and that his actions were a gross deviation from the standard of care that a reasonable person would exercise in the situation. To Balconer, on count 1, the Class E felony of involuntary manslaughter in the second degree, I sentence you to a term of incarceration in the Missouri Division of Adult Institutions of 3 years. On the unclassified felony of armed criminal action, I sentence you to a term of incarceration of 6 years in the Missouri Department of Corrections. Those cases, or rather those counts and sentences, will run concurrent with one another for a total term of incarceration of 6 years.
The Vulcanair was sentenced to 6 years in prison for brutally murdering an innocent man. Shockingly, in December of 2024, the sentence was commuted, and he is expected to be out of prison soon. Now, while this officer got lucky, this next tyrant was rightfully sentenced after doing something bizarre.
Verdict reads, we the jury, having found the defendant Aaron York Dean guilty beyond a reasonable doubt of the offense of assess his punishment at confinement in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice for 11 years, 10 months, 12 days.
In 2019, Fort Worth police officer Aaron Dean was called to a residence where he fatally shot the homeowner, Atiana Jefferson, from her bedroom window. He was found guilty of manslaughter. The judge did not take long to announce his sentence.
Y'all did fabulous when we did the guilt-innocence verdict, okay? Same rules apply. I don't know what this verdict is. Can't have any emotions, all right? Let's bring him in. Verdict reads, we the jury, having found the defendant Aaron York Dean guilty beyond a reasonable doubt of the offense of manslaughter, assess his punishment at confinement in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice for 11 years, 10 months, 12 days. They do not assess a fine. And it is signed by the presiding juror. You may be seated. Thank you very much.
Miss Jefferson was carrying no weapons whatsoever and was coming to answer the door when the tyrant cop pulled the trigger.
Juror number 1, is this your verdict?
Yes, Your Honor.
Juror number 3, is this your verdict?
Yes, Your Honor.
Juror number 4, is this your verdict?
Yes, Your Honor.
Juror number 6, is this your verdict?
Yes, Your Honor.
Juror number 9, is this your verdict? Juror number 37, is this your verdict?
Yes, Your Honor.
Juror number 38, is this your verdict?
Yes, Your Honor.
Your verdict will be received and filed. Thank you very much. Mr. Gill, Mr. Brissett, is there any legal reason why sentence should not be pronounced?
No legal reason.
Mr. Dean, it's the jury having found you guilty of the offense of manslaughter and assessed this punishment. It's the order of the court you be remanded to the custody of the sheriff, be delivered to the director of the Texas Department of Criminal Justice to serve your sentence as required by law. You will receive credit for all the time that you have served in custody on this case from the date of your original arrest.
Dean was immediately kicked out of the job and now faced a prison sentence of 11 years.
If you are indigent and cannot afford a lawyer, I would conduct an indigency hearing to determine if you are indigent. And if you are indigent, I would appoint a lawyer to represent you on appeal and provide you a record of this appeal of this trial at no cost. Mr. Gill, Mr. Brissett, if y'all will remain on his case pending his decision whether he wishes to appeal, and if you'll furnish the information for the trial court certification of appeal before you leave here today, I would appreciate it. Is there an allocution?
Yes.
You may be seated. Thank you very much.
Moving on, this sheriff thought he was above the law, but was instantly shown his place in court.
Let's get him on the opposite side of this truck.
Let's go over here, sir.
Cody? Let's go on the
I
opposite
can't
side.
Sir, let's walk over here.
Why is that? That's messed up.
Let's walk over here.
Sure. That's what I'm saying. Let's get him on the opposite side of this truck.
And the court left the door open.
For me, not for you.
Evil cops often believe their badge grants them immunity from justice. But when their crime catches up to them, the courtroom becomes their ultimate reckoning. Today we'll be going through cases where corrupt cops face their darkest hours. In 2017, a series of troubling events unfolded about Sheriff James Lujan's assistance to a friend and former city councilor, Phil Chacon, and his attempt to escape law enforcement during a police pursuit. The officers arrived at the facility to take Sheriff Lujan into custody.
Stack up on the front. Towards the phone. Hold it. Go here. Stack up in front.
Morning, sir. Executing the search warrant. Sheriff Lujan.
Search warrant for him or?
For the building as well. I have no idea. It's house. But no, just stay here. No, I can't have you enter the scene.
You guys are fucked up, man.
Why are they beating on things?
You guys want to put him?
Let's get him on the opposite side of this truck.
Let's go on your side.
Cody?
Let's go on the
I can't
opposite
tell.
side.
Sir, let's walk over here.
Why is that? That's messed up.
Let's
dude.
walk over here.
Sure. That's what I'm saying. Let's get him on the opposite side of this truck.
Well, you got Tabitha over there.
Not yet.
I got the press out here taking pictures of me in handcuffs.
The sheriff was shocked by the circumstances and felt he had too much right to be the target of a search like this. To get him to cooperate with the search, deputies had to use their authority.
Push him around into the doorway. Yeah, push him around into the doorway. At least to the doorway.
Just right here. Don't go
This is ridiculous.
Keep him up there.
Hold on, we have press.
Keep him up there.
Come over here, sir.
Keep him up there.
Sheriff,
Let's go.
What are you doing?
Stay out here.
Ah, Jesus.
Really? You don't have to.
Look
just
to you.
stand.
Look behind
just
you.
stand. Just stand.
Stand up. Stand up.
Put him on this side of the truck. Put him on the outside of the truck.
It hurts.
They're loose, sir. They're loose.
No, they're not loose.
They're not even.
Sheriff, those are loose.
So I'm going to read a stipulation.
Can you take these handcuffs off? They hurt. They hurt. Am I under arrest?
You're being detained.
Well, yeah. Why do I have to have cuffs on? They hurt.
The sheriff was advised by the deputies that he was the subject of an active search warrant. When the sheriff realized how serious the issue was, he refused to cooperate and insisted on speaking with his lawyer before taking any more action.
25, 21 units, make sure you guys stay running hot.
So on this is signed by a district court judge. Okay? Judge Bowman. Okay. First judicial. Okay. So this search warrant gives me the authorization to seize your phone. Okay. Search your phone.
Okay.
But it also gives me the authorization. So what I'm asking for you to do is unlock your phone, unlock it, give it back to me, and I'm going to remove the security settings. I don't want your passcode. I'm not asking for your passcode. I'm asking you to unlock the phone. Per the search warrant, you can read it if you want under number 2.
I will if I get a chance to talk to my attorney.
It doesn't work like that.
Marty,
this is not a negotiation.
mira.
This is not a negotiation, Sheriff.
Given how many warrants he probably handled in his career, it is astonishing that a sheriff would not know how a warrant works. He refused to comply with the deputy's request, which resulted in his arrest.
You can talk to your attorney when this is all
I've been
done.
asking.
When this is all done, you can call your attorney. But right now, we're trying to get you to comply with the warrant. The warrant stipulates exactly what we want. You give us that, we'll get the phone, we're out of here. That's it. What do you want to do, Sheriff?
Right now, I'm under arrest. Because I am under arrest. I am in handcuffs. I'm not free to leave. I'm not free to leave? Am I free to leave? No. Then, if I'm under arrest, I have a right to an attorney, correct?
You do.
Okay.
And I'm not questioning you.
I'm invoking my right to an attorney right now.
Okay.
You understand that?
So, take him in.
Book me for
booking. For obstruction. Obstruction.
Booking. I'm not obstructing.
Take him over here to our unit. Take him over here to our unit.
Over here, Sheriff. Over here.
Sheriff. They're gonna book me.
Really? Look at this shit. Look.
Stop. Just walk.
What are you doing? Stop, Sheriff. What are you doing?
The sheriff faced public humiliation right outside of his own office. Instead of giving up his phone to the officers, he chose to be handcuffed.
I'm telling you what the warrant stipulates.
I understand that. And
I told you what the warrant stipulates. You have every opportunity to cooperate. If you want to cooperate, you're going to jail. Have a seat, sir.
All right, good. Why is already
You've been
Take the whole
searched,
thing
really?
out. No, I haven't been searched. Just take me
step
so
out
we
here.
can do it.
I don't want to make sure you don't have any knives.
I don't have any knives. I don't have any weapons. That's my wallet.
That's your wallet. What's it?
My keys to my truck. I don't have any weapons. Okay? I really don't. You took my weapon. As a matter of fact, you left it on the back of my truck over there. Did you get somebody to secure it,
We'll
please?
secure everything for you. Have a seat.
Can you move these to the front?
No, sir. Against department policy. Have a seat.
Well, it's tighter than hell. They hurt.
Sheriff, those are very, very loose.
Really?
Step
Nah.
out. Let me see if I can fix them. They're very, very loose.
His arrest was not taken lightly by the sheriff's colleagues, who started threatening the Santa Fe deputies. Tensions between the two departments were only heightened by the fact that they were arresting their own sheriff while on Rio Arriba territory.
That's his mag, and then we're gonna get you his sidearm.
Get everything. I don't want part of it.
What do you mean everything?
Everything.
So this is what we took off this person? You're the one that took it off this person?
Took it off this person.
Deputy Graves.
Well, inventory it before you get it.
We're handing it right over to you.
Inventory. Get away from me. Look what you guys are doing.
We're trying to do everything peacefully. We tried to. Okay? That's all we're doing. We're done here. We're leaving.
Okay, well, get out of here then. You're done. Get out.
We'll leave when we're ready.
You said you were done.
Yeah, we're wrapping it up right now. You know how it goes. You know how it goes. We're doing our law enforcement duties. That's it. District court signed it. That's it.
Okay.
Okay, so as soon as we're done, we're gonna get out of your hair. Why are you calling everybody here to put them
This is our
involved?
house.
Well, right now it's ours. Right now it's ours. We own the building right now.
Shut up.
Don't talk to me like that.
Shut up.
I don't work for you. Don't
Okay,
talk to me like
shut
that.
up.
Easy,
Go over
easy. Get that and let's go. Are we done in there? Are we done in there? Okay.
The sheriff was taken straight to the police station for further questioning by the deputies, who refused to back down despite the mounting pressure.
I have no idea, sir.
You find out from?
You go ask her. Well, this is your house. You go ask her.
Oh, now it's my house.
Yeah, it is now. Because we just gave it back to you.
Ah, these things hurt. God.
The sheriff was ultimately accused of 2 felonies, helping a victim and intimidating a victim. When the case went to trial, the judge gave a harsh verdict, holding the corrupt sheriff completely responsible for his deeds.
The people of Rio Arriba County elected you to be sheriff. They put their trust in you to uphold the law, and you let them down.
Yes, Your Honor, I try to do the best that I can to help everybody I can, and I in no way would want to.
The law is the law. You are not above the law, nor can you ignore the law when it serves your purpose. The sentences will be served consecutively for a total of 4.5 years, of which 3 years of imprisonment and 1.5 years supervised probation. You let down the people of Rio Arriba County, and you let down the Sheriff's Department, the department that you led. What kind of example were you giving the people that you supervise?
He resigned as sheriff 1 day after being found guilty and was sentenced to a 3-year jail sentence. This next officer did not care about his actions, even in the presence of an 8-year-old.
It's the jury having found you guilty of the offense of manslaughter and assessed this punishment.
Dean was initially charged with the murder of Jefferson. However, the judge told the jury that they might also consider a manslaughter conviction prior to the panel's deliberation. A manslaughter conviction in Texas can result in a maximum sentence of 20 years in jail.
Verdict reads, we the jury, having found the defendant Aaron York Dean guilty beyond a reasonable doubt of the offense of manslaughter, assess his punishment at confinement in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice for 11 years, 10 months, 12 days. They do not assess a fine, and it is signed by the presiding juror. You may be seated. Thank you very much. Members of the jury, as we went through before, I'm going to call your juror number and ask you if this verdict is your individual verdict. Juror number 1, is this your verdict?
Yes, Your Honor.
Juror number 3, is this your verdict?
Yes, Your Honor.
Juror number 4, is this your verdict?
Yes,
Juror number 6, is this your verdict?
Yes, Your Honor.
Juror number 9, is this your verdict? Juror number 14, is this your verdict?
Yes, Your Honor.
Juror number 15, is this your verdict?
Yes, Your Honor.
Juror number 21, is this your verdict? Juror number 31, is this your verdict?
Yes, Your Honor.
Juror number 32, is this your verdict? Juror number 37, is this your verdict? Juror number 38, is this your verdict?
Yes, Your Honor.
Your verdict will be received and filed. Thank you very much.
The main question at trial was whether Dean knew Jefferson was carrying a weapon. In his testimony, Dean claimed to have seen her weapon, but the prosecution said that the evidence did not support this claim.
It's the jury having found you guilty of the offense of manslaughter and assessed this punishment. It's the order of the court you be remanded to the custody of the sheriff, be delivered to the director of the Texas Department of Criminal Justice to serve your sentence as required by law. You will receive credit for all the time that you have served in custody on this case from the date of your original arrest up until today, which would be the date of sentence. You have the right to appeal the jury's decision. You do so by giving written notice of appeal to the Second Court of Appeals here in Fort Worth within 30 days. If you are indigent and cannot afford a lawyer, I would conduct an indigency hearing to determine if you are indigent. And if you are indigent, I would appoint a lawyer to represent you on appeal and provide you a record of this appeal of this trial at no cost. Mr. Gill, Mr. Brissett, if y'all will remain on his case pending his decision whether he wishes to appeal, and if you'll furnish the information for the trial court certification of appeal before you leave here today, I would appreciate it. Is there an allocution? You may be seated. Thank you very much.
The cop received a sentence of over 12 years in jail after being found guilty of manslaughter. Later on, a $3.5 million settlement was also approved for the boy who saw his aunt getting shot to death through her home's window. The saga of evil cops just doesn't end here. This next officer didn't hesitate to shoot a schizophrenic patient. On January 15th, 2020, employees at an AT&T shop on Main Avenue reported a client yelling at workers and brandishing a knife, prompting Norwalk police to come to the scene. When he was asked to leave, the man tried to take a cell phone, but the clerk was able to get it back from him. Solomon, the suspect, reportedly called for a ride-sharing service, argued with the driver, and then slapped him. When the driver got out of the vehicle, Solomon stole the car, and that's when the police initiated the pursuit.
Visual left off 43.
Get out of the car! Get out of the car! Jackson! Go to taser! Taser! He's got a knife! Drop the knife! Drop the knife!
Solomon was chased by state police on I-95 North from Norwalk into West Haven, where he collided with multiple cars and police cruisers. When he pulled onto the exit 43 ramp and stopped under the Campbell Avenue Bridge, the chase came to an end.
I got the knife. It's on the hood. Pull him out. Jackson, go to taser. Taser.
While the police officer yelled orders, a trooper smashed the car's window and retrieved the knife. From another angle, it becomes clear what the trooper did next, an action that will leave you in complete shock.
He's got a knife. Drop the knife. Drop the knife. I got the knife. It's on the hood. Pull him out.
According to Trooper Brian North, he fired to defend other police officers. However, the state's inspector general concluded that the gunshot wound was not justified. Brian's trial started on March 4th, and here is what happened in the trial. When North testified on March 8th, 2024, he said in his testimony that he shot Solomon because he thought that the lives of fellow officers were at risk. What is interesting is the fact that this cop thought that a group of armed police officers could be harmed by a 19-year-old with a knife.
Now, sir, you were asked a series of questions about you firing your weapon in this towards Mr. Suleiman. Please describe again why you fired your weapon that day.
It was to protect the West Haven officer and Trooper Jackson from the threat of imminent death or serious physical injury.
And you were just shown a series of still photographs that included Trooper Jackson's body-worn camera. Do you recall seeing those?
Yes.
And again, your decision to use force the way you did was based on what?
It was based on what I was perceiving at the time.
During the trial, the lawyers kept delving deeper into the circumstances surrounding Solomon's death, relying on video footage and police department testimony for further examination.
Who was in charge?
There was no one person in charge.
And who made the decision to break the passenger side window?
It was a West Haven officer, Officer Rappa.
Did that decision change the overall situation?
Yes, once the glass of the window was broken, Mr. Suleiman, it startled him, and the situation, he rapidly escalated it.
Prior to the breaking of that window, what was Mr. Suleiman's state?
He appeared to be unconscious and unresponsive.
We watched a video of you interacting with Trooper Richter and Sergeant Kiley. Do you recall that?
Yes.
The prosecution argued that North's early remarks after the shooting were contradictory, as the officer ordered Solomon to drop the knife completely, ignoring the fact that he shot Solomon 7 times.
So we're not trained to reassess after each shot. We're trained to reassess after each use of force, which would be an engagement. So that brief series of shots you would then reassess after that.
And Attorney Devlin had asked you, if I'm quoting correctly, did you fire as many times as you wanted to? My question is, how many times did you want to?
There was no number. It was just whatever I thought was necessary to stop the threat at hand.
And then you use the term reassess. At what point would then you have the ability to reassess?
Immediately following shots being fired.
You were asked questions about the fact that you shot through glass, correct?
Correct.
What impact does firing a weapon when shot through glass have on the shot?
Objection, no foundation.
The cop clearly replied that he isn't trained to assess the situation after shooting. He also explained that his response was influenced by the information given to them that Solomon was armed and involved in a carjacking.
That if that West Haven officer was not going through that window, but was standing outside as is shown in the video, it would not be objectively reasonable to shoot that gun at Suleiman, right?
Objection, Your Honor, that's speculation.
He's asking, he had him read the state police criteria there, and I'm asking him if no one's going into that car, it's objectively unreasonable to shoot the driver.
Can we just do it one step at a time?
Sure.
When the officer asked him if using the gun was an objectively reasonable response given the situation, the officer remained silent. He was unable to defend the use of deadly force above de-escalation.
Is he guilty or not guilty of the lesser included offense of criminally negligent homicide in violation of Connecticut General Statutes 53A, 55, with which he stands charged? Not guilty. Does the court accept this verdict?
Yes.
The jury may be seated. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, please listen to your verdict as it is accepted in order recorded by the court. You, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, each of you do say unanimously that the defendant is not guilty of the crime of manslaughter in the first degree with the firearm in violation of Section 53A, 55, paren A, paren 3, and Section 53, 55A of the Connecticut General Statutes as outlined. You, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, each of you do say unanimously that the defendant is not guilty of the crime of the lesser included offense of manslaughter in the second degree with the firearm in violation of Connecticut General Statutes 53A, 56, paren A, paren 1, and Section 53A, 56A of the Connecticut General Statutes as outlined. You, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, each of you do say unanimously that the defendant is not guilty of the lesser included offense of criminally negligent homicide in violation of Section 53A, 55 of the Connecticut General Statutes as outlined.
The Milford jury found Trooper Brian North not guilty on all counts by a Milford jury, in spite of a strong popular disapproval and conviction that he was guilty. Following 2 weeks of testimony and several days of discussion, the jury gave a verdict that ended the trial. Now, while this cop was let go easily, this next judge did something completely unexpected in the courtroom.
Before the
Don't get brazen with me.
During a night of chaos in Kenosha, sparked by the police killing of 29-year-old black man Jacob Blake, who was left paralyzed after an altercation with a cop, Rittenhouse armed himself with an AR-15 style gun. As things got quickly out of hand, Rittenhouse opened fire, killing 36-year-old Joseph Rosenbaum and 26-year-old Anthony Hubert, in addition to wounding 26-year-old Gage Grosskreutz.
You indicated that at no time did this gun, this AR-15, ever leave the state of Wisconsin. Is that right?
Other than the night after, other than that.
Before the shootings?
Correct.
There was a time, though, where you wanted to have it with you down in Illinois, isn't it? It wasn't there?
I believe there was a time when me and Dominic were mad at each other. Yeah.
You were mad at Dominic?
Me and Dominic were mad over something.
And you wanted to have the gun with you down there?
I think I said something along those lines.
You'd agree with me that let me back up for a second here. You have testified to this jury that you used deadly force against Joseph Rosenbaum, Anthony Hubert, the man who attempted to kick you in the face, and Gage Grosskreutz on the night of August 25th, correct?
Yes.
And you did that because you felt that your life was in danger from those four people, correct?
Yes.
And you are telling this jury that it was, in your mind, justified to use deadly force to protect your own life, correct?
Yes.
Many of the most contentious topics of the country are addressed in this case, such as vigilantism, self-defense, the Second Amendment, violence during racial justice protests, and the different perceptions of how the legal system and law enforcement handle white people and people of color.
You'd agree with me that you were not allowed to use deadly force to protect that CarSource building, correct?
Well, I wasn't using deadly force to protect the property. I used deadly force to protect myself, so.
Please listen to my question and answer my question if you can. You'd agree with me that you were not allowed to use deadly force to protect that CarSource building, correct?
Yes.
You'd agree with me that you were not allowed to use deadly force to stop someone from smashing the windows of an unoccupied parked car, correct?
I don't think you could use deadly force for that.
You'd agree with me that you can't use deadly force to stop someone from lighting a metal dumpster on fire, correct?
Correct.
You'd agree with me that you can't use deadly force to stop someone from tipping over.
Correct.
You'd agree you can't use deadly force to stop someone from lighting a flatbed trailer on fire, correct?
Correct.
You'd agree with me that you can't use deadly force to stop someone who is about to start an unoccupied car on fire, correct?
Prosecutor Thomas Binger was accused by lead defense lawyer Mark Richards of disobeying earlier decisions and trying to provoke a mistrial. However, tensions in the courtroom increased as Binger replied and prompted an unexpected response from the judge.
Mr. Richards? Your Honor, Mr. Binger is either forgetting the court's rulings or attempting to provoke a mistrial in this matter. He knows he can't go into this, and he's asking the questions. I asked the court to strongly admonish him, and the next time it happens, I'll be asking for a mistrial with prejudice. He's an
Binger? First of all, Your Honor, this was the subject of a motion. I'm well aware of that, and the court left the door open.
For me, not for you.
My understanding of
You should have come and asked for reconsideration. You did on the one motion, and in fact, I granted your motion for reconsideration.
That was not our motion.
Excuse me. I did. I granted.
We did not move
that
to
was
reconsider.
their motion.
We have not filed any motions to reconsider in this case.
That was their motion for reconsideration, which I denied. But I said I denied it, or I indicated a bias towards denial is what I did.
When prosecutor Thomas Binger implied the court had allowed for specific lines of interrogation, including those he pursued with the defender, the judge dismissed the jury and became enraged.
Why would you think that that made it okay for you, without any advance notice, to bring this matter before the jury? I was astonished when you began your examination by commenting on the defendant's post-arrest silence. That's basic law. It's been basic law in this country for 40 years, 50 years. I have no idea why you would do something like that. And it gives, I'll leave it at that. So I don't know what you're up to.
May I respond?
Yes.
We filed an other acts motion on this exact issue because, in my mind, and I argued this, it is identical to what was going on the night of August 25th, in the sense that the defendant was using this exact same weapon. He was using it in a manner to try and protect property.
No, he wasn't.
Your Honor, with all due respect...
I'm not going to rehash the motion. Yeah, that's absolutely untrue. No. Your argument's of record. My comments are of record, and why I ruled as I did is of record. There's nothing that I heard in this trial to suggest anything's changed, even if you're correct in your assumption that you know more than I did at the time.
What came next was extensive verbal attacks aimed directly at the prosecutor. According to the report, the prosecutor's strategies in the past have contributed to worsening these serious issues in high-profile cases.
May I finish, please? I'd like to have a chance to make a record, if I could, without being interrupted, if that's okay. He has mentioned that he's acknowledged that he's used this gun to protect property. He's also just acknowledged that he knows he can't do that. I am attempting to impeach him now with the prior August 10th incident, 15 days prior, involving the same gun, where he is threatening to use that gun to protect property. He has the
gun with him.
Your Honor, he is saying he wished he did so he could shoot people.
You know, there's a lot of difference between commenting about something when you haven't got a gun and threatening someone when you do.
You know, it's interesting, Your Honor, because the entire defense theory in this case is Joseph Rosenbaum, who was unarmed.
I want you to tell me what the defense theory of the case is. I want.
May I respond to what you just said, Your Honor? I'd like to respond to what you just said. I apologize, Madam Court Reporter, but I'd like to try and make a record without anyone interrupting me, if that's okay.
Binger, however, kept his cool and claimed that he had filed an other act petition to provide evidence indicating that Rittenhouse said that he wanted to use his weapon to protect property rather than people.
I've admitted that kind of evidence in other trials when it's been appropriate. I didn't admit it in this case because, to me, what I've heard in this trial, and by the way, Mr. Richards absolutely correctly points out that just hours ago, I said I had heard nothing in this trial to change any of my rulings. So why?
Testimony, Your Honor.
Pardon me?
That was before the defense
Don't
testimony.
get brazen with me. You knew very well. You know very well that an attorney can't go into these types of areas when the judge has already ruled without asking outside the presence of the jury to do so. So don't give me that. That's number one. Number two, this is propensity evidence. I said at the time that I made my ruling, and I'll repeat again now for you, I see no similarity between talking about wishing you had your AR gun, which you don't have, so that you could fire rounds at these thought to be shoplifters, and the incidents in these cases, which are not. There's nothing in your case that suggests the defendant was lying in wait to shoot at somebody.
Judge Schroeder lost his cool with the prosecutor, but in doing so, he mischaracterized the case and was not corrected. The prosecution said that Rittenhouse was the one who started the altercation and provoked the people he shot.
When you were I said you were over the line, close to or over the line on commenting on the defendant's pretrial silence, which is a well-known rule. I'm astonished that would have been an issue. So I don't want to have another issue as long as this case continues. Is that clear?
It is.
Thank you.
Well, if this wasn't shocking enough, this next cop was found guilty in the murder of his wife and son.
The detective said, side chick, that's his baby mama. And there's a possibility that the boy is his son. I'm thinking we're supposed to be the good guys. He's supposed to be watching my back.
It is rare to see a police officer held accountable for their crime, but today we bring you some of the most shocking cases of corrupt officers who did the unthinkable and faced justice in court. Starting with a Border Patrol agent who made the most shocking decision of his life. On April 9th, 2018, Laredo police officers and Border Patrol agents were notified about a double homicide that had occurred in a park. The suspect was another Border Patrol agent, Ronald Burgos Avias, who was in his car when the officer stopped him. It wasn't until 2023 that this case was on trial, and the first responders were telling what happened.
The person that was using that car at the time was supposed to meet a Border Patrol agent at the Father Magnoble Park.
Okay.
The transmission that came in was the boyfriend's name was Anthony Burgos.
Okay.
When the radio transmission came up for Anthony Burgos, there was only one Border Patrol agent that was at that location with us. I had just seen him. I had never seen this person before. I see him. He's right near the car, and so I wave him over. I say, "Hey, come here." As he's walking up to us, the name says Burgos. So we look at the name. I'm looking at the name as he's coming over, and I'm just like, "Hey, what?" I think this is the person they just called over the radio, but they said Anthony, and I look at the first name and it's an R.
Ronald Burgos had just committed the ultimate blunder, and he was about to be taken to the cleaners by his fellow Border Patrol agents who wouldn't fall for his bluff.
He tells him, "Hey, what's your name, man?" And he says, "Ronald Burgos." And we're looking for Anthony Burgos. And radio transmissions are coming through, and so it's kind of getting a little hectic. Burgos approaches closer to Reyes. I'm walking next to him. I'm the only uniformed officer. So I'm right next to him, and he says, "Hey man, what's your name?" And then Burgos says, "Ronald Burgos Aviles." He only uses his last names. So then Rick's like, "What's your dude, why are you not telling me your name? What's your name? And he says, my name's Ronald Burgos Aviles. And he says, you're not telling me your name. Do you have an ID or something? And he's like, no, I don't have an ID.
The Border Patrol agent had just arrived after murdering his ex-girlfriend, the mother of his child Griselda Hernandez, and his 1-year-old baby Dominic Hernandez. It was appalling to see how Burgos reacted after doing something as heinous as this.
Yes, so once I took the belt off, I put it behind his unit, and then I patted him down as the unit approached us. So I patted him down. I located a phone on him and a driver's license in his shirt pocket.
Okay, so, and what did you do with those 2 items?
I turned over the driver's license to Detective Reyes, and the cell phone, I put it with his property that I had already taken, which was his Sam Brown. I put it in the back of his truck.
The prosecutor moved forward to show the court the dash cam video of the arrest of the Border Patrol agent. As you can see, the corrupt officer had no remorse on his face.
I'm sorry, brother. 7643-513-851, yeah.
What is it that he's doing in that scene?
He's wiping his arms. Looks like he's cleaning something off or...
What was it that he did right before he wiped his arms?
he licked his finger.
Officer Ronald Burgos was desperately wiping his arms and even sucking his fingers, trying to remove any trace of evidence. He had just used a knife to his ex-girlfriend and their young son, with the evidence plainly visible to everyone.
Come on, man. Oh yeah, he could have just told me straight up, man. So don't make him go through it. Embarrassing, big ordeal.
As the trial progressed, witnesses came forward, and amongst them was a key witness, another Border Patrol agent, Francisco Lara, who made a shocking revelation.
I look south and I see the silhouette of the young woman. So I completely forget about Mr. Burgos and I start running towards the victim.
See the victim?
As soon as I see the victim, I approach and I start yelling. Like, señora, despierta, estás despierta. Ma'am, wake up. Because at this time, all I see is blood. I told my trainee, I call him Schmitty. I like, Schmitty, is that what I think I'm looking at? And I see the silhouette and I immediately start running towards her. And that's when I tell him, like, I start yelling at her, estás despierta, are you awake? Do you have any gloves? He's like, no, I do not. So I say, I don't have any gloves. And I asked my trainee, Schmitty, do you have any gloves? And thankfully, being the great agent that he was, he did have a pair of gloves.
Burgos had devised a strategy, as moments after his ex-wife and son, he ended up calling the cops, claiming that a murder had been committed. Officer Lara explains how he tried to con everyone.
And I immediately check for a pulse. I don't feel a pulse. I look at my fingers and they're covered in blood, because I checked her neck area. So I don't feel a pulse. So I immediately see her left wrist. It's facing up. I check her wrist, and again, I do not feel a pulse. Right away, I told Mr. Burgos, sir, I think she's 10-7, which means that she's dead. And he's like, yeah, it looks that way. So I'm radioing everything into our station, and I'm letting him know what I'm seeing. At this time, he's standing there. Not really, the supervisor normally takes control of the situation and radios in everything to the station. Once again, he's quiet. I'm the one relaying everything that I'm seeing to the station. I'm processing everything in, I'm taking it in, and I'm telling them what I'm seeing. And right away I start telling the camera operator to start scanning the river. I tell him, scan the river, see if you see anybody going back.
Burgos had used his police training, carry out the crime in a bushy area, where Griselda ended up having 27 stabs, and baby Dominic had received 2 as well.
Next to the victim, I check her. Mr. Bowden is standing over here too, I guess on the other side of her. So I tell him she's 10-7, which means she's dead. Radio everything in. I told base 2, I think she's dead. They tell me take a step back, treat her as a crime scene. So before anything, I told my trainee, go to the gate and open it for the paramedics. He takes off. So before I take a step back, I'm surprised to see so much blood. So I grab my head and I'm like, where is all this blood coming from? I take a step back. At the time he picks her up, I could see the shadow of her face.
Officer Lara, a junior at the crime scene, could not believe his eyes as he watched his senior, Officer Burgos, handle the victim with shocking indifference and remained completely unfazed by the brutality of his action.
I get a phone call from my team leader. My team leader tells me, hey, we already activated the Border Patrol unions, the lawyers for you. Before you make any statements, we already got lawyers. And I'm like, we already made our official statement. He was surprised. He's like, oh, you did? I'm like, yes. He's like, before he hangs up, he's like, just so you know, there's a rumor saying that the dead woman is Burgos' side chick. I'm like, all right, 10-4, let me call you back.
It wasn't until detectives began investigating the murder that Officer Lara realized that the woman was Burgos' ex-girlfriend and the mother of his child. This revelation left him in a deeply emotional and shocked state.
We just heard her.
Going to question answer basis, Mr.
I'm good, sir. Thank you, Your Honor.
That is exactly how everyone in the court felt, and we can only imagine the condition of Griselda's family. It turned out Burgos had committed this horrible act just because he was refusing to pay child support. Finally, after listening to hours of testimonies and getting evidence, the jury reached a verdict.
In cause number 2018 CRA 852D1, in the case of the state of Texas versus Ronald Anthony Burgos Aviles, the jury has returned a unanimous verdict. I'm about to read the verdict of this jury on punishment as to count number 1. Special issue number 1 on count 1. Whether there is a probability that the defendant, Ronald Anthony Burgos Aviles, would commit criminal acts of violence that would constitute a continuing threat to society. Answer, yes. Signed by the foreperson. Whether taking into consideration all the evidence, including the circumstances of the offense, the defendant's character and background, and the personal moral culpability of the defendant, there is a sufficient mitigating circumstance or circumstances to warrant that a sentence of life imprisonment without parole rather than a death sentence be imposed. Answer, yes. Signed by the foreperson of the jury.
The jury unanimously decided that Burgos would receive life imprisonment instead of the death penalty. Now, many might argue that the death sentence would have been a more fitting punishment for such a heinous crime.
You heard me announce the verdict of the jury with regard to both counts of this indictment. It is now my job to sentence you in accordance with that indictment, with that verdict. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
After being found guilty by this jury of 2 counts of capital murder, and after giving us the verdict that they have just announced, it is my job now to pronounce sentence. As to count 1 of capital murder, and as a result of the sentence of the verdict of the jury, you will be sentenced on count 1 as to capital murder
to a term of life without the possibility of parole. As to count 2,
Burgos was immediately transferred to the jail and is guaranteed to die there. The shocking encounter truly left everyone speechless, and it is even more saddening that it took 5 years for justice to be delivered to the poor victim's family. Well, nothing might top the brutality shown by this officer, but this next tyrant made another huge mistake.
Nothing in his hands, and he was shot twice
in 2011, during a routine traffic stop, Officer Osvaldo Villarreal fatally shot an unarmed Benny Herrera. The victim's family filed a lawsuit, but it took 5 years for the case to reach pre-trial, as Villarreal's attorney attempted to argue for qualified immunity.
It's a tragic case, there's no question about that. But Officer Villarreal was required to make a split-second life and death decision.
What required him to do that? It doesn't look to me as though he was the initiator.
The fact that Mr. Herrera, first of all, he had been acting erratically before the shots were fired, moved from a place of relative safety on the shoulder of the road into the roadway. He was skipping
But if we're
backwards.
talking about Officer Villarreal, how much did he know about the prior behavior?
He saw all of that.
I have to say what you're saying is inconsistent with what I saw on his own camera. That is to say, the point at which he began to get close enough to see anything. Some of that earlier stuff was on the other camera, but not on his.
Officer Villarreal had shot the poor suspect only a second after he asked him to take his hands out of his pocket, and sadly, the attorney was defending this monster.
All at one point, his camera was turned on, but he testified.
His camera was turned on well before he got to the scene.
He testified in deposition that he saw Mr. Herrera on the side of the road, and then he saw.
Well, he can testify to what he wants to testify to, but I want to tell you what I saw on his own camera tells me that the early part of this he did not see, could not see. That was his intention, you say?
That was his intention, and now, that's in his deposition.
Again, I'm relying on what's on the videotape, and now this is in Officer Villarreal's car. I hear him say, "Take your hand out of your pocket," and I hear the gunshot almost simultaneously.
Exactly.
They cannot be separated by more than a second.
And that's exactly the time period when Officer Villarreal had to make his decision.
Shockingly, even the police department cleared Officer Villarreal's conduct, but the judge had another idea.
Here, Mr. Herrera was arguably complying with Officer Villarreal's order to remove his hand from his pocket at the time that he was shot. So how is it that we determine that we should grant qualified immunity?
Because qualified immunity allows for police officers to make mistakes. It allows for the possibility that officers will make mistakes in judgment, and that's exactly what happened here. Officer Villarreal had a choice to make. Do I wait and see whether there's something in the hand that could kill me, or do I shoot? And he made the decision to fire. We know with the benefit of hindsight, obviously, that was wrong.
The officer was about to face the consequences of his actions as the judge unanimously decided that his qualified immunity should be tossed.
As long as the historic facts are undisputed, the question of whether or not Officer Villarreal's actions were reasonable is a question of law. It's not a question that you give to a jury, because we don't want juries second-guessing the very, very difficult life and death decisions that officers have to make.
I agree, but at this stage, again, this is not an argument to a jury. For us to even have jurisdiction over this case, we take those facts. Yes. You're saying that as a matter of law, the shooting here was legal.
Yes, it was objectively reasonable. Well, not just those facts. Officer Villarreal knew that Mr. Herrera was a suspect in a domestic violence incident. Okay. He knew that he had gang affiliation, that he was on parole, that he had a warrant out for his arrest. All of those things factor into
on parole. I don't remember on parole.
On parole, yes, and there was a warrant out for his arrest.
What do we know about what Officer Villarreal knew with respect to whether he was armed?
We know that dispatch told Officer Villarreal and Officer Miali that Mr. Herrera was not known to be armed.
The attorney continued to make bizarre and illogical arguments, but the judges swiftly rejected them, firmly believing that the officer should at least stand trial for his actions.
No, sir, the suspect had refused to put up his hands, had threatened the officers, and an officer believed that she saw something in the suspect's hand, saw him move his arm, and was worried he was going to shoot her. but yet we affirmed the denial of qualified immunity in part because the suspect had not brandished a weapon or spoken of a weapon.
I do recall that case, Your Honor.
The domestic violence incident was over.
Yes, and there.
So, I mean, how does that strengthen your case? I mean, that was, if you're arguing that it was an ongoing domestic violence, so.
It wasn't an ongoing domestic violence incident, but he was warrant out for his arrest, that he had known gang affiliations, and all of those things factor into, am I afraid of this encounter, or do I think that this is going to be a perfectly safe encounter? And everything that they observed, or a lot of the things that they observed, heightened the situation to a point where it was objectively reasonable for the officers. Nobody disputes that, for example, that it wasn't objectively reasonable for the officers to have their guns out. They were going to do a felony stop. Domestic violence under California law is a felony. So they had their guns out. There's some question about whether or not there were other alternatives available. Well, in the split second that decision had to be made, you couldn't put the gun down and pick up a baton. You couldn't put the gun down and pick up a taser, assuming that Officer Villarreal even had a taser. I think there's testimony in the record that he didn't have a taser available to him. He had to make a decision based solely on what he knew at the time. And it's easy for us to sit in hindsight and say, well, Mr. Herrera didn't have a gun. Mr. Herrera didn't really pose any
I don't think
threat.
anyone here said that one time.
No,
I think what we're focusing on, again, the narrow standard we have to deal with here. And that's what we're dealing with. This is not a jury trial. This is not summary judgment. It's a very limited thing. No one here has raised about the fact he didn't have a gun.
I understand. The trial court did.
The plaintiff's attorney stepped forward and presented compelling arguments that further solidified the need for the officer to face trial, strengthening the case against him.
And that the officers perceived a heavy object in that pocket. That's...
First part, yes. Second part, a little less clear. But I think there's no question that he had his hand in his pocket.
Well, and both officers said it looked like he had something heavy in his pocket.
Okay.
All right. And then just before Mr. Villarreal opened fire, Mr. Herrera rapidly removed his hand and moved quickly, it seemed like, toward the officer's car. Why isn't that enough?
Well, because sticking on the undisputed facts, the officers had no information that any weapon was involved in a crime. They were specifically told he was not known to carry weapons. He had nothing in his hands, and he was shot twice and killed. We specifically asked the officers about their training, and they conceded, which is included in the cites in our brief, that deadly force is a last resort, only to be used in the direst of circumstances, only when no other reasonable measures are available. And
finally, the judges reached a conclusion and gave one last shut-up call to the defense attorney.
If everything goes bad for your client, that is to say, if we send it back, if the jury says no qualified immunity, and if the jury comes in with an award of some amount of damages, will your client pay those damages out of his own pocket, or will it be paid by his employer?
It should be 99.9% of the times it's paid by the employer. I don't see why it would be different.
Well, by statute, California statute says it's paid by the employer unless they're punitives.
Yes,
isn't that right?
That was what I was going to say.
So that doesn't say 99%, it says 100.
Well, I was going to say, unless there were punitive damages, the city would have the option of deciding whether to pay those punitives.
Next, this officer unlawfully arrested an auditor, but got some sweet karma by the judge.
We've got a complaint of you out here holding up profanities. Okay. I'm not going to tell you again. Okay. You have your ID on you? I don't have my ID. Put your hands right here.
Cops often commit atrocities, forgetting that they can be held accountable. Today we'll go through this shocking case where a corrupt officer faced swift karma in the courtroom, leaving him with nowhere to hide his misconduct. In December of 2018, a YouTuber named Otto the Watchdog stood on public property displaying various signs. Over about 30 minutes, drivers honked and waved, showing their support, but things were about to get dramatic.
And the sheriff's office dispatch.
Hi, there's some people out here at Interstate 30 and South Elm that have some very offensive signs.
Meanwhile, officers from the Roy City Police Department were called to the scene, and Officer Johnny Clark was sent to Otto's location.
Where's Johnny with the other? Should be right over here. Thank you. Yes. Some guy holding up a sign that says shit is f***ed up and stuff or something. Still an officer. How are you? Well, I was doing just fine until just a minute ago. I've already heard you say a cuss word once. So. What do your other signs say, sir? Sir, what do your other signs say? What am I doing? Okay, can I see your other signs? No, leave my seat away. Sir, we've got a complaint of you out here holding up profanities. Okay. Okay, if you don't let me look at your sign, I'll take you in custody for disorderly conduct.
Otto was soon surrounded by officers who came to confront him about his sign. Otto firmly declined consent to the search and seizure multiple times, which infuriated Sergeant Dial. What happened next turned into a shocking standoff.
I'm not going to tell you again. I'm not being disorderly. Okay. I'm not going to tell you again. All right? I don't consent to any searches or seizures. Okay. This is offensive to people that are driving by. And families that are driving by. Yes. Yes, it's disorderly conduct. What's the penal code? It's disorderly conduct. Can you read that to me? It's disorderly conduct. Okay. You have your ID on you? No. Okay. Now you're failing the ID. I don't have my ID. Right here.
The situation escalated when the senior officer punched the signs out of Otto's hands. Evidently, taken by surprise, Officer Clark instinctively jumped back in fear.
Roll over. Since he's failing the ID, take him to jail for disorderly conduct. When we're here answering a complaint and you refuse to identify yourself, that is a crime. When you're displaying these signs and people are calling because it's offensive to them, that is another crime. So yes, you have committed a crime. You've committed two. You didn't warn me. We don't have to warn you. Ignorance of the law. I asked you politely to see your signs, and you said no. I don't consent to any searches or seizures of my property or my person. Don't argue with him. I'm not going to take you.
By laying down on the ground and indicating that he thought his intention was illegal, Otto opted for passive resistance. His message was clear. He wouldn't fight back, but wouldn't comply either.
Is that your cell phone and tripod? If it's not, I'm going to leave it sitting here. If it is, I'm going to take it and put it up so somebody doesn't steal it. But if you want to act this way, I'll leave it sitting here and let somebody steal it. Why would you do that? Okay. We don't know whose stuff that is either. I have a question. What am I being arrested for? The officer just explained. Now it's not time to ask questions. Oh, yeah, it is the time to ask questions. You know what? Nobody even asked me to identify it. All he did is ask me if I had ID, and I don't have ID. Let me explain something to you, young man. We're not holding court on the side of the road with you, okay? Well, you're arrested me. I just want to know why. I just want to know why I have handcuffs. Any questions you have, you can ask the jail, or you can ask the court. You gonna get up? I can. Okay. Roll back over, and I'll help you up. I'm not sure if I can do that either. I would like to see your supervisor right now before you assault me any further. We're not. I am being assaulted. I have not committed a crime.
The officer made a questionable threat by saying he would leave Otto's camera at the scene for anyone to take it. This remark only made things worse for the officer.
I have not committed a crime. Get up. I have not committed a crime. I can't get up. You're hurting me. You are hurting me. Then get up. I cannot get up. Then get up. I can't get up like this. They lift you up. I'm trying to get up. Matt, please get up. Well, assist me up instead of trying to. We're trying to help you up. Lift you up. I'm trying to get ass. Yes. No, I've seen the game before. Roll up to your knees and they will assist you up. Roll up to my knees. I'm a fat ass. Okay. Help me to my knees. We already have one. Well, help me again. Now they'll lift you straight up. On your feet. Stand up. Okay, help me up. I have committed no crime. I have committed no crime whatsoever. That's not yours. Remember, I asked you earlier. Come on. So you're going to leave my shit on the side of the road. Get my equipment. Get my equipment. You dude, I'm asking for you to get my... Hey, I've committed no crime. Unlock your car, please. No crime! They want to turn this phone off. I ain't turning nothing off. I'm going to leave it right like that, put it in evidence.
According to cops, Otto was detained for not identifying himself. However, under the Texas Penal Code, a person is not legally required to identify themselves unless they are under arrest.
If it was his, he didn't want to talk. I heard it on. Yeah. Okay. He knew where his car was. Somewhere up there. If I had to bet. the law, you're still under arrest for failed ID.
I was under arrest, and then I ID'd, as the code says.
No, the code says when you're legally detained, you're required to ID yourself. You did not.
It specifically says arrested. I didn't do nothing.
What's your phone number?
I didn't do nothing.
Otto took a stand against the injustice by filing a lawsuit against Sergeant Dial and Officer Short for violating his First Amendment rights and malicious prosecution. The sergeant was then taken to a deposition where Otto's lawyer expertly dismantled his defense, leaving him completely exposed.
As I explained earlier, one, it was an officer safety issue because I don't know what the signs are made out of or what they were. And they could be used as a weapon. And secondly, we were still investigating whether a crime had been committed, and he was unwilling to show us what the other two signs, or what the sign says, other than what we could see.
Did you believe that Mr. Knowles had an obligation to give you those signs?
What do you mean, an obligation?
Did you have the right to see those signs?
Well, it's part of our investigation.
Did Mr. Knowles have the right to refuse showing you the signs?
Anybody can refuse anything.
Objection form. Why did you hit the sign so hard?
Objection form.
Now, you would think that Sergeant Dial, after being 11 years on the police force, would be well versed in his knowledge about the law, but that is not the case. His lack of knowledge was blatantly obvious.
I don't know what your definition of hard and soft is, and that was 5 years ago.
How do you define hard and soft? You can use your own definition, please.
In regards to what?
The level of force that you apply to the signs.
I mean, I don't know how I would describe hitting a sign soft or hard.
Why didn't you use less force when touching the signs?
Objection. I didn't know I used too much force.
Could you have used less force when touching the signs?
Objection. In regards to what? I mean, what was the amount of force that I used?
You said earlier that you conducted an investigation after you arrived on the scene that day with Knowles. What were the results of that investigation?
In regards to what?
In addition to violating Otto's First, Fourth, and 14th Amendment rights, the sergeant's complete ignorance about the laws surrounding disorderly conduct was painfully obvious.
Did you find anything during your investigation that caused you to arrest Knowles, that caused anyone to arrest Knowles?
Through our investigation, we determined that disorderly conduct had been committed.
How did disorderly conduct get committed?
Due to the verbiage that was on the signs, and we had received complaints.
His lack of knowledge showed that he was not qualified for the job.
If you received the same complaints, and those signs had said something different, would Knowles have been arrested?
The same complaints in what? Because the complaint we had was, it was vulgar and offensive.
What I'm asking you is, if the complaints were the same, but the contents of the signs were different, would Knowles have been arrested?
Objection.
What if the sign said Blue Lives Matter?
How is Blue Lives? There's nothing vulgar about Blue Lives Matter. There's no profanity in Blue Lives Matter.
Are you saying that if the sign said Blue Lives Matter, Knowles would not have been arrested?
I'm telling you that based on the complaints that we received that day, a guy telling me that he was offended by the profanity and vulgar that was being used in the signs.
Objection, non-responsive.
Sergeant Dial couldn't cite a single law that Otto had broken and claimed that the arrest was made simply because someone was hurt by the signs. Clearly, he needs to pick up a book on the Constitution.
If the complaints were the same, but the sign said Blue Lives Matter, would Knowles have been arrested that day?
Objection, son. There's no vulgar or profanity in in the verb or term, the verbiage or term Blue Lives Matter.
Do you think anyone that says a bad word publicly should be arrested?
No.
Why not?
Did someone complain on them, or are they just out there just throwing a fit? No complaints. I mean, there's several reasons why we would not arrest someone. I mean, if nobody finds it offensive, then disorderly conduct's not met.
So if the language on the signs had not offended someone, Knowles would have been arrested, or would he not have been arrested?
So you're telling me we didn't receive any calls and nobody complained to us? Would we have arrested Knowles that day?
Correct.
No, we wouldn't have. Not have.
The lawyer held the sergeant's feet to the fire during the deposition, completely controlling it, but the best part was yet to come.
What specifically did Clark say to you about Knowles' prior disorderly conduct?
He was explaining it to Knowles that as I'm walking up, he's explaining it to him that, look, I've already heard you out here cussing at people.
So he was talking to Knowles, not you?
That is correct.
Did any motorists complain about the prior alleged profanities that Knowles said before you arrived?
Well, the one gentleman told me about the signs, and regarding what the people on 911 called in about, I do not recall that.
If anyone complained about verbal language and you didn't hear any allegedly profane verbal language from Knowles at the scene?
I did not hear it, but I heard Clark explaining to Knowles that he has already witnessed it or observed it himself.
The lawyer was ready to ask the question, leaving the officer speechless.
Do you know one word of profanity that Knowles said?
No, I do not.
And you are not aware of any person that was offended by what Knowles said?
No.
The sergeant dug his own grave when he admitted that the arrest was made based on the information on the placard.
Were you offended by the contents of his signs?
No.
Why did you think they were offensive?
The sergeant's mistakes continued to mount as the lawyer focused on the core issue of First Amendment rights.
So you would arrest somebody if a citizen complained about vulgarities?
Objection, phone. So a citizen made the police department or dispatch aware that they had used profanities and vulgarities and were...
Been 5 people in your career?
I believe that would be an accurate statement.
Have you observed more than 10 arrests in your career?
I'd probably say I have observed more than 10 arrests in my career.
It is startling that a 10-year police veteran was unaware of the First Amendment. For the whole law enforcement community, this raises a crucial question of what sort of police officers are being trained and produced.
Have you observed more than 25?
That I don't know.
Have you observed more than 30 arrests in your career?
I don't know.
Do you remember any specific details about your training regarding First Amendment rights?
No, I do not.
Are you saying that you don't remember one word from your training regarding First Amendment rights?
Objection. That is correct. We went over the elements of the Constitution, and I believe the First Amendment is part of the Constitution.
But specifically the First Amendment, you don't remember?
Correct.
Do you remember how long you spent studying constitutional rights?
No, I do not.
Have you had any training related to constitutional rights since you became an officer?
I do not recall.
For someone in such a high-ranking position, this officer's level of stupidity is astounding. How could someone with such a lack of knowledge be entrusted with authority?
What topics have you been trained on since you became an officer?
I don't recall all of them.
Name one.
Accident investigation.
Anything else?
I'm sure there's others.
Where did you receive the training regarding constitutional rights in 2007?
When I was in the police academy, is that what you're referring to?
I'm referring to the training that you referred to, that you received in 2007 regarding First Amendment rights.
The Collin County College Police Academy.
And who trained you in constitutional rights?
Could not tell you.
Because you don't remember?
You're asking for the instructor's name? No, I do not remember the instructor's name.
This is the result of failing to get enough instruction on constitutional rights and the First Amendment.
Do you remember anything about the protections provided to citizens by the First Amendment?
No, I do not.
Are you aware that the First Amendment gives citizens what's known as the freedom of speech? Have you heard of the freedom of speech?
I have.
What do you think that means?
Interpretations are a dime a dozen, but basically someone can speak freely.
Following the deposition, the city was compelled to settle the case by paying Otto $25,000.
Does the First Amendment protect a person from being arrested because of what they say?
Objection form calls for legal conclusion.
Do I answer it?
Answer.
I think at times it may.
Has the police department provided you with any subsequent training on constitutional rights since you've been an active officer?
I do not recall.
Have you received any training, guidance, or instruction regarding First Amendment rights while you've been a police officer?
Objection form.
In the police academy, I know we went over the constitutional rights.
But anything since then?
I do not recall.
Despite his startling lack of legal knowledge, the sergeant faced no consequences. In fact, he was promoted to lieutenant. Well, that brings us to the end of this video. Today we saw one of the most outrageous and reckless actions from a law enforcement officer who faced instant karma in the courtroom for his misconduct. The officer thought that he could get away with his mistakes, but justice caught up with them. It is a reminder that no one, not even those in positions of authority, is above the law. If you agree, please support me by liking this video. Also, if you enjoyed this video, watch how this police chief was owned by her junior officer.
All right, guys, you done in here? All right, guys, get out of the house, please. You don't need to be searching.
We're not searching going through it.